And again, since Jay-Z is a public figure, he knows that actual malice has to be demonstrated. And so what this lawsuit is essentially saying is, Tony Buzbee, you knew this wasn't true, you knew this was false, and you decided to run with this anyway, and for that, you're gonna have to pay. Sean Carter, better known as Jay-Z, has had some very serious accusations thrown his way. As you know by now, he, along with Sean Diddy Combs, are accused of raping a 13-year-old girl. But Jay-Z has thrown out some serious accusations of his own. But the thing is, the accusations against him are so dark and ugly that I don't think people are really paying attention to what he's saying. And in this video, we're going to break down his accusations. Welcome back to the channel. If you've watched some of my videos before, if you don't know me, my name is Jamahl Kersey. I am a criminal defense attorney. I've been practicing law for over 15 years. And on this channel, we break down legal concepts so you're in the know. I just want to take a brief moment to say thank you. My little channel's been growing lately. So thank you to all of you who've been liking, subscribing, and most of all, sharing these videos. I really appreciate it. All right, so we all know by now that Sean Puffy Combs had been the only celebrity who was specifically named in this lawsuit, and Jay-Z was added later. But before Jay-Z was officially named in this lawsuit, a demand letter had been sent out. And we learned about this demand letter through the lawsuit that Jay-Z ended up filing against Tony Buzbee. And you've been hearing a lot about this demand letter, but just to set the record straight, demand letters are very common practice in civil cases. So whenever you have some sort of civil harm, in order to avoid the cost, the time involved, and the efforts of formal litigation, that is, everything that comes after you file a lawsuit, it's very costly, it's very time consuming. If you can informally resolve a case by way of sending a demand letter and then, the back and forth and phone calls and settle a case, then that's going to be much better than having to go through litigation. So even in a run-of-the-mill car accident case, you're going to have a demand letter kick everything off. So, the lawyer sends a demand letter to the insurance company saying, hey, your insured rear-ended my client. He's suffered a bulging disc and he's had to go to the hospital and get all this treatment. He's been doing physical therapy. He can't, throw a football with his son anymore. And so we're asking for X amount of dollars in order to settle this case, right? And so the other side, if they say, well, it's clear that our insured rear-ended your client and it's just a matter of, how much is the case worth, then maybe we can resolve this case short of lawsuits being filed and having to go through all of the process of litigation. Okay, we'll go ahead and settle this case informally. That happens all the time. But what Jay-Z is saying in his legal filings is this was not just a run-of-the-mill demand letter that you routinely see in civil practice. No, this was a blackmail attempt, right? And blackmail, extortion is a crime. And so let's just break down what blackmail is. It is basically forcing somebody to do something by threatening to reveal either embarrassing, incriminating, or damaging information if they don't pay you. So for example, John might get to the office, he sees an envelope on his desk, he opens it, it's pictures of John and his mistress. Moments later, John gets a phone call saying, if you don't give us $100,000, we're going to send these pictures to your wife and kids. That would be blackmail. And so Jay-Z is accusing Tony Buzbee of blackmail. So he is accusing a licensed attorney of blackmail, basically saying that in this demand letter, Tony Buzbee was essentially accusing him of having done inappropriate things with minors, basically a male and female minor. And so he would have the option of, you can agree to a confidential mediation, right? And so what that would be is, when you have a mediation, you usually have a mediator, and then you have both parties negotiating against each other in order to determine how much money is going to be paid out. So make no mistakes about it. I know that Tony Buzbee has said, well, we haven't asked for any money, but I just kind of find that to be a little disingenuous. At the end of the day, if you are going to a mediation, the idea is at the end of the mediation, you are going to agree to pay money. So basically, this letter is saying you are going to pay money, or I'm going to release this information about these heinous, salacious acts that you've committed. So Jay-Z had already made this blackmail accusation, but he recently added defamation. So the law relating to defamation basically protects people from having false information ruin their business or their personal reputations. As a defamation example, let's take two doctors. They're both plastic surgeons. We have Dr. Paul, we have Dr. Don, right? So Dr. Paul has been killing it, right? And Dr. Don is jealous of Dr. Paul. And so he ends up putting out some information about Dr. Paul's practices. He says, man, Dr. Paul in his surgical procedures, he's using illegal chemicals that cause, irritation and adverse reactions, right? And so Dr. Paul, surprisingly to him, he sees a dip in his sales, right? He did $10 million last year, and now he's on pace to do $7 million, right? So he's suffered a 30% drop in sales, and he has no idea why. But then he learns that Dr. Don has been spreading this information about him. So Dr. Paul ends up getting a lawyer and ends up going after Dr. Don and suing him for defamation. So defamation is essentially putting out a statement, whether that's a verbal statement or a written statement. It's about the plaintiff, and that statement harms the plaintiff's reputation, and the statement is a false statement of fact. So it has to be false, and there's some level of fault attributed to it. So you negligently put out that statement. When you're dealing with public figures, you have to prove actual malice. And what that means is you either knew that what you said was false or you acted in reckless disregard of the truth. So this is where it gets interesting, because Jay-Z is accusing Tony Buzbee of defamation. And so obviously anything related to violating children is going to be harmful to someone's character. This has to be a statement of fact versus an opinion. So if you just say, hey, I think she's way too skinny, that's a statement of opinion versus fact, versus in this situation, if you are suggesting that Jay-Z has been doing inappropriate things with minors, that would be a statement of fact. But here's where it gets interesting. One of the elements is that it has to be false. So Jay-Z, through his attorney, right? We haven't had Jay-Z come out and do a press conference and say, I never did these things. And he doesn't have to. And in fact, it wouldn't be advisable for him to do so. He has a lawyer, and he's allowing his lawyer to speak on his behalf. And Alex Spiro has gone to great lengths to put out the message that this never happened. But where it gets really interesting is the fact that truth is an absolute defense to defamation. So if somebody's putting out information about you and it harms your reputation, but it's true, then you cannot be successful in a defamation action. So again, it's clear that Jay-Z has already suffered reputational damage, and he's probably going to be able to show business losses as well, either in the current or in the future. There are going to be companies who are not willing to do deals with Jay-Z because of the information that's come out. And so it's very interesting, because both sides, both lawyers, are going to be aware of the implications of the filing of this lawsuit, right? So Buzbee has to know that, hey, if Alex Spiro and Jay-Z are putting out these accusations of defamation, then he must be thinking that, wow, maybe this is not true, right? Because at the end of the day, the lawyers weren't there, right? Alex Spiro wasn't there. I mean, from Alex Spiro's perspective and Jay-Z's perspective, this never even happened. So there's no there to be at, right? But either way, they weren't there, and Tony Buzbee wasn't there, right? So his client has told him what, allegedly happened to her, and he clearly on some level believes it, at least believes it enough to sign off on it and put it in a complaint and file it in court. But he doesn't really know. He can't be 100% sure because he wasn't there. And typically, you're not going to have these type of lawsuits filed in response to accusations against you. But in this situation, that's exactly what Jay-Z is doing. He's like, no, this is defamatory. And when you're saying that this is defamatory, you are inherently saying that what they're accusing you of is false. And so this adds another interesting wrinkle to this case, because again, with the NBC interview, the result of that NBC interview was what we saw Alex Spiro put on, ripping apart all the inconsistencies in that case. And again, I will just reiterate for everybody that the inconsistencies, for me personally, raise a doubt as to whether this actually happened. However, I also acknowledge the fact that these inconsistencies in and of themselves do not mean that this absolutely could not have happened. Again, I don't know, and neither do you. But I think Jay-Z accusing Tony Buzbee of defamation on some level is going to have Tony Buzbee at least reevaluate and reassess his strategy moving forward. Because again, within a defamation lawsuit is the assertion that what you're being accused of or what's been said about you is false. And again, since Jay-Z is a public figure, he knows that actual malice has to be demonstrated. And so what this lawsuit is essentially saying is, Tony Buzbee, you knew this wasn't true, you knew this was false, and you decided to run with this anyway, and for that, you're gonna have to pay. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think Jay-Z adding defamation to this lawsuit is further proof that these allegations are false? Or do you think it's just a bit of legal gamesmanship? Let me know in the comments below. And if you got something out of this video, show me some love, hit that like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.